Let me tell you a little story.
So 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to call myself out on a bluff. Now in high school, when I started to have any interest at all in cars, I told myself that one day I would sign up for one of BMW's M driving schools. Now, saying that at the time, I felt a little bit relieved of any responsibility because it seemed so far-fetched and so out of reach that I never felt like I needed to follow through on it. Well, 3 years ago, I got an email from BMW about one of their M track days up in Monticello, New York. And this was half a day of driving with guidance from professional instructors through all of their M cars that were available at the time, which was everything except the M5, because the M5 was between generations at the time. But we're talking M2, M3, M4, X6M, X5M, and I started to feel a little bit of a pit in my stomach for two reasons. One, because this was a huge opportunity to drive a bunch of amazing cars for a price that I could afford, but also because the reality started to hit that this is real track time.
Nonetheless, I signed up with promising myself one particular thing, that I would use any and all of my conversational skills to connect with as many of the professional drivers who, in reality, I would never have the ability to connect with otherwise. And I knew in my head, especially with racing car drivers, that this was sure to come off as annoying. But I didn't really care, because if I kept my mouth shut, I would have missed out on the opportunity. So I'd rather open my mouth and blow it than wonder what if. Anyway, the day ended up being filled with straight line drag races and lead follow sessions on the track and timed autocross laps and a bunch of prizes that I didn't win. But at the end of the entire day, I was left with one distinct feeling: deflation. So near the end of the day, I met one of the professional drivers by the name of Emile Beret. All of the elbow rubbing throughout the day that led to nowhere ended up paying off in folds in connecting with Emile, because it ended up being a 90-minute conversation of us talking about our professions and cars and driving and said deflation. And I started asking him about any insight that he had into the feeling of feeling deflated with something like that, when I was terrified of going around the track at what ended up being 40 to 50% of the car's ability. And I felt like I was losing controls in the corners and I couldn't keep up with the other people. And it started to sort of worry me because of the fact that this was something that I considered could be a potential passion. And I started to feel like I wasn't cut out for it. You see, what Emile had explained was that if I approach it with some level of intelligence, which I'd like to think I have, and a bit of humility, which you can't get more humble than self-deprecating, then all I would really need was seat time. And so taking that to heart, I decided that while I didn't take every opportunity, I at least took the occasional opportunity here and there over the next few years to gain a little bit of seat time in a controlled environment on a track. And that actually led me down the path of actually getting to the BMW driving schools, which I'll hopefully talk about in another video. But what was really awesome was that at that point I had gained a mentor in Emile, especially since he offered to keep in touch from that point on, which we did. But really, after that point, that was the only time I got to actually see and speak to Emile face to face.
And so you can imagine how amazing it would be to have a mentor figure like Emile, which was even greater when he offered to keep in touch with me, which we did. And so over the remaining 3 years, while I was developing whatever little skill I could, he kind of was there for me, kind of guiding me throughout the whole thing. And hey, I'm over here. And so 3 years later, I'm back at the same place. And it's funny because in a sort of Groundhog Day scenario, I'm back at the same place for the same event. And last night, just like 3 years ago, I got off a shift at midnight and I'm here early in the morning. And again, just like 3 years ago, I'm getting to finally see him again.
Not my brother.
Now, who is Emile Beret? Well, let's start from the beginning. He is a car designer by trade. He's a professional stunt driver for the Screen Actors Guild. He is a BMW M instructor, as well as an instructor for a couple of other racing schools. He is honestly one of the most genuine and nicest people I've met.
But if you want really the daddy, M5 for the win.
And as you can see around me right now, we've got 9 M5 competitions here, behaving, waiting very patiently. They're like dogs on a leash. 5,500 horsepower lined up if you multiply it by 9. 617 horsepower all-wheel drive, because you ain't getting that power down any other way. But what's going to happen right now is we're going to be doing a lead follow. So if you come over here and see the straight to the track, now basically the instructor goes out in a lead car and 3 or 4 of the participants follow. It sounds a bit roundabout compared to what the name is, but you know. So they're out there with M5 competitions, M8 competitions, and you might even be able to catch some of the sound behind me. If you're wondering who this event is for, I mean, let me explain it to you. All these people in these cars right now are civilians. They're normal people, not professional drivers. They're not amateur drivers. They don't have the racing license. They're just people here out to have fun.
As you drop down the crest, add throttle. There you go. Release the brakes. Real easy into turn 2. We're asking a lot out of the left front tire there, so we don't want to overload it. Try to straighten your hands a little bit before we turn into turn 3. As you get just right of the apex, start feeding some throttle in. There's a lot of banking right there. Braking, release brake, look to the inside, keep it tight to the inside. And as you see the track open up, be smooth with throttle. Let the car unwind.
That was an example of what it's like to be on the track. First of all, it's absolutely mind-blowing that these drivers are, number 1, steering with one hand, number 2, holding a radio with the other, number 3, watching in the rear view mirror while navigating a track, and number 4, telling them what to do when they hit the mark while they're down the street. You can come to this event having no track experience ever before, like I did 3 years ago, and they navigate you around the track, and you push your comfort zone as comfortable as you want to be. It really taught me that, yeah, there's marketing tools and there's gimmicks and all this stuff, and you always hear ultimate driving machine, blah, blah, blah. But until you actually take it out of your element, until you actually take it out into its element. And I mean, yeah, they're trying to get you to a point where you want to buy one of these things, but when a product sells itself, that's it. The day is over, and it is quite bittersweet. It was beyond words seeing Emil, especially with how much I've grown since then and how much more we've been able to talk about. Speaking of running my mouth at the risk of annoying people, I connected with someone else by the name of Faris Fetyani, who is a photographer and a phenomenal one. And you guys can also check out more of him and Emil in the Instagram handles displayed on the screen here. But anyway, thank you for coming along with me for this ride. I hope that this video gains some traction in getting your engines revved to maybe take one of these M track days, or heck, even checking out Monticello Motor Club, because they have public days. You should at least experience it once in your life. It's an amazing opportunity. Thank you for joining me. I hope this was enjoyable for you. It certainly was enjoyable for me. I already miss it. I can't wait for the next opportunity. But in the spirit of making things happen, I'm going to try to make the next opportunity happen, and I'm going to take you along with me. Take care.